Okay, I think we are ready to rock. Welcome to the Mediaocean Current, our webinar series, and today we're going deep on our 2026 H2 market report. My name is Aaron Goldman. I'm CMO at Mediaocean, coming to you live from my house of brands here in Chicago. And we've got a great lineup for you today. In just a minute, I'll introduce Chris Costello to take us through the key findings from our research. And then we've got Megan Gall, Innovid's SVP of Marketing Strategy, in a conversation with Thomas Atkins, who runs media for MGM Resorts International, and Jinx Joglakar, the CMO of Optimum. I love that we have such memorable nicknames here. No Abbott, just Costello for our routine. But I guess if we talk at the same time, we can call Jinx. So there you go. I'm going to set up the report and cover the methodology. This is now the 10th biannual report that we've done dating back to 2021. So every 6 months, we conduct a survey, analyze the findings, help understand what's happening in the advertising, media, and marketing space. To date, we've had more than 6,000 respondents, so it's a very substantial pool to draw from. The N at the bottom of the charts is indeed impressive, and it gives us a nice year over year body of work for comparison. So for this particular report that was fielded in May, we had 312 marketers weigh in. And as you can see, they're pretty well diversified across verticals and sectors. So tech was the biggest with 26%. And then after that, no single industry made up more than 12%, with FinServe coming in there, auto at 11, retail at 10, and then 8% each for CPG, entertainment, and telecom. We do have vertical cuts of the data. We've made infographics for the top sectors, so you can see how the outputs break out separately if you're interested in going deep. And actually, we'll share some of those links right now. So first, we've got a link to the press release where you can read the highlights from the report. You can also download the report from our website. So those are the top two, and we'll drop links in the chat. We also have infographics, as I mentioned, for each of the top verticals. So here you have automotive, CPG, or FMCG, if you're on the other side of the pond. And let's see, on the next slide, we've got a few more here. So we have infographics for entertainment, FinServe, retail, tech, and telecom. Hopefully I said those slow enough so that we can drop in all the links. If you're on a desktop and want to hit the QR code with your phone, that's another way to access it. And we will be sending out a recording of this webinar along with links to all the assets mentioned here. So if you didn't catch them in time, no worries. There'll be plenty of opportunities for you to get them. And then after the research, so after I turn it over to Kaz here in just a second, we're going to have the panel discussion with Megan, Jinx, and Thomas. And then I've got a few more parting gifts for you at the end. So do stay tuned for that, some additional content that I'm sure you'll be excited about. Okay, and so for today's research and this report, we're going to cover 7 key insights, and Kaz will unpack these for you one at a time. So I'm just going to kind of tee it up quickly. Number one is around digital maturity, signaling the arrival of what we're calling the core pillar era, and we'll explain what we mean by that. Number two is performance, becoming the anchor of the media plan and testing as the lever. Number three is the pragmatic shift from hype to hands-on implementation with AI. I'm sure we're all feeling that. And then number four, navigating the gap between evaluation stage and autonomous production for AI agents. Number five, bridging the CTV performance gap with unified visibility. Number six, modernizing transactions for strategic scale, and that gets into supply path optimization. And then number seven is transparency and actionability, setting the new standard for ad verification. So a lot of great insights here. And to walk through them, I'm going to introduce our very own human in the loop, Chris Costello, also known as Kaz. And for those that don't know him, he's an analytics and digital marketing guru from Chicago, over 20 years experience across agency analytics and tech. I first met him when he was at Havas, recruited him to join me at the time the company was called Kenshu. It's now called Sky. He was our senior director of marketing research. He was there twice as long as me, a full decade. And during that time, he analyzed over $8 billion in annual ad spend across paid search, social, and retail media. He built out the Sky quarterly trends reports, which became a widely read, highly regarded benchmarking program. He's spoken at industry briefings and roundtables for folks like Truist, RW Baird, BWG Global. And before Sky and Havas, he was at Performix, SPSS, and RollingStone.com. And speaking of music, Kaz's also an avid musician. I've had the good fortune of seeing him gig around town here in Chicago. He plays drums, guitar, vocals when he's playing solo. He's also in a cool band called the band Calderisi, so check them out. And he recently hung his own shingle as an analytics consultancy called 16th Note Analytics, which is a cool name, of course, ties into music. And so, Kaz, why don't you come up on video now, and I'll ask you to maybe explain the name before you get into the research. So, Kaz, I will turn it over to you.
Sure. Thanks for having me, and thanks everyone for joining. As Aaron said, I've now put together an analytics shop called 16th Note Analytics. Obviously, I was looking for some way to bridge the music and the analytics work. It's all about patterns in both instances, and kind of came across the idea of the logo that kind of informed then the naming. And you can see it's kind of a hybrid of musical notes and a line chart. So, best of both worlds. So once again, thanks for having me. And I think now let's dive into the meat of this report. Again, just a refresher, we're going to go through each of these 7 insights one by one, and then we're going to turn it over to the panel. So kicking things off, the first thing we're talking about is digital maturity, signaling the arrival of this core pillar era. So what does that mean? Well, one of the things that the benefits of having this kind of longitudinal study where you're asking these questions over time, if we see on the next slide, I'm going to prepare you. It's very dense. There's a lot of information on the next slide to take in, but we're going to walk through what to look for. And we ask respondents, for each of these channels, do you expect to increase, decrease, maintain your spend? And we ask that over time. This gives you at least 3 ways of slicing and dicing this information. The first is, what are most marketers choosing to increase their spend in? And you see that as, what's kind of towards the top of the chart. And we see AI media, we see connected TV being the top 2. Then we can also see who's increasing versus decreasing. As you get farther down, for things that people are increasing a lot of, you see a big difference between increase versus decrease. As you go further down, you get to some of the more traditional channels. You get search, you get retail media influencing, where it's, maybe maintain is a little higher, and that's certainly not a bad thing. And then you get down a little further, you see where decrease is starting to outweigh increase, and you see some of the more traditional forms. So that's some of how you can read this chart. What does this mean for what we're talking about with core pillars? Well, we see a lot of, quite a number of channels where the decrease is very small, 10%-ish, maybe a little higher, a little lower. And these are areas that are, increase or maintain. So in addition to the velocity we're seeing around AI media, around connected TV, some of these other channels we're seeing a little bit of both, but also not many people decreasing. Only 9%, for example, are decreasing search. Same for digital display and video, for example. So that's another way that we can kind of parse this out. So in kind of figuring out what's going on in this chart, there are kind of 3 main groups. You have, where does increased spending win? And you see AI media, you see connected TV, you see digital display and video, you see social platforms. Then do you see, where is maintained spending winning, but increase is higher than decrease? And there you see search, you see out of home and digital out of home, you see radio and audio. And then, where does maintained spending win, but the decrease is higher than the increase? And there you see again, this story we've seen for years and years and years, where digital is taking away from traditional media. And we see local TV, national TV, and print. A couple other call outs are in the report. I recommend that you download the report and talk about things like why radio and audio is doing better than you would think, because radio looks traditional, but then audio includes podcasts. And when we talk about the core pillars, it's about a sizable number of folks are investing in these channels full stop, whether it's maintain or increase. And so you're seeing a lot of that trade-off. If it's moving a little bit from, say, November to May, you're seeing a little bit of a decrease across the board. You're seeing a smaller percentage increasing pretty much for every channel on here, and that kind of speaks to this maturation process. This like, wait a minute, we're not just going to spend money like drunken sailors here. We're going to think a little bit more about these channels and what we want to do here. Excuse me. We move on to the next slide. We can see that, and there's a nice quote in the report that says the path to growth in H2 of 2026 is increasingly industry dependent, because what we took were each of the different verticals that Aaron showed at the top, and we said what was the top vertical for planned spend increases? What was the highest increase? And you can, or the highest percentage who said they were increasing. You can see, for example, in education, 100% was AI media. So you see some of the cutting edge, some of the leading edge industries that are investing in things like AI, the exclusive growth driver for education. It's a leader for technology, for telecommunications and travel. But then you see, other patterns, some of which you might expect. Retail media influencer and creator marketing is the primary expansion tool for retail, for direct to consumer. And then out of home and digital out of home is big for like QSR. And you think about it, that kind of stands to reason. And then more traditional sectors, digital display and video leads for automotive and financial services, and social is kind of the anchor for entertainment, which also, passes the smell test. So those are our core pillars, and the core pillars are, again, somewhat variable by industry, which you would expect, and they are kind of seeing some of the breakouts that you would expect as well. Moving on to our second insight, and that is performance is the anchor. Sorry, I'm something in my throat here. Testing as the lever. So the question that was asked of our marketers was, given the current macroeconomic conditions, which advertising capabilities and media investments are most critical? So again, two things here. You can see on the chart for each of these items, the percent who said it was critical for the last 5 of these reports, going back to July of 2024. And you see, first and foremost, performance-driven paid media is at the top of the list. You see AI breaking out. There are a couple things here when you look at the historical piece. When you look at May versus November, you see performance-driven not only is the top, it grew particularly from the last survey to this survey. You see that for AI, you see that for automation, you see it for creative testing and personalization. And one of the things that I see in this chart with those changes time over time is a bit of association on what we're seeing AI do. We'll get to that explicitly a little bit later, but when you see that growth for performance-driven media, AI, automation, creative testing, that tells me that those are kind of moving together. And if we were to, for example, run a factor analysis on this, I think we would probably see those align into a factor that shows that alignment between them. And this is going to start to emerge as, again, our second point. Performance is the anchor. We see that performance-driven paid media being at the top of the list and more important, but then testing. We're seeing that it didn't move as much, but measurement and attribution is still a big deal. We're seeing that move in automation, that move in creative testing, and that's definitely emerging as important. And I don't think it's a coincidence that that's moving while AI is moving as well. And a couple things, or some things down on this chart that you may see and you may kind of, raise your eyebrow at when you look at how privacy and identity are not necessarily as top of mind as performance-driven media and AI. That typically, it doesn't necessarily mean they're not important, but if you look at how the question is phrased, we're talking about given the current macroeconomy and what's most critical. And at the end of the day, when the rubber hits the road, ROI is going to win over most of our other elements. So I talked about how AI is developing, and so how does that look in terms of implementation? We're seeing a shift to more pragmatism, from hype to hands-on implementation. What do we mean by that? When we ask what the most important trends you're searching for, you're watching for are, AI once again tops the list by a fairly healthy margin. We're seeing, a good, well, almost 15 points over connected TV in this most recent survey. A little bit, that's a bigger gap than we saw last time. But connected TV is also up there. You're seeing some of these things kind of tail off a little bit. Um, but when you look at the survey over survey look, then AI and e-commerce everywhere are the only trends that have grown. We also asked, how is AI impacting your media and your creative workflows today? Now, this is where that comparison from last survey to this survey gets interesting, because last time we saw a lot of people saying moderate change and major transformation. Both of those have kind of dialed it back a little bit, quite a bit, in fact. And we're seeing growth in minimal impact and too soon to tell. And, that kind of, is that a backlash? Is that a right sizing? Is that even surprising? And for this, I want to give it back to Aaron, because we talked about this is kind of normal for new tech and new developments, and it even has a name.
Yes. So folks that know the Gartner hype cycle will be familiar with sort of the curve where things, as new technologies and innovations come into market, there's sort of the peak of inflated expectations, and then it sort of starts to dial back into what we call or what they call the trough of disillusionment, before then kind of reestablishing itself on the plateau of productivity. And so we're somewhere in between those first two phases. Clearly, I think where it's going to fall for each brand and partner is going to be situationally dependent. But I do think this is a normal cycle that's indicative of any kind of hot tech, when people start to actually adopt it, get their hands in it, and as we talked about here, become more pragmatic about adoption and using it.
Right on. And then we had one more question on, I mentioned earlier, you can kind of imply what people are using AI for. You can also ask them how they're currently using AI in their marketing. And, some of the top ones we saw: data analysis, creative development and personalization, um, market research, performance insights and reporting. All of these are of a piece with optimization and some of the labor intensive elements we've seen in digital marketing for a while, and testing. When you look at performance insights, you look at campaign optimization, you look at creative development and personalization, all those go into AI as an engine for kind of always on testing, which is, I think, something that we've always been interested in as digital marketers. I would also say, and we'll see this a little bit when we talk about agents, that some of these things have been AI driven for a while, but not necessarily in the hands of marketers themselves. So I think we're also seeing a democratization of AI, where you can do more of the stuff in-house that you might have had to rely on either the middleware or publishers for doing as well. So let's keep this thing going so we can make time, or we can hit our time. And now, I hinted at AI agents, and so there was questions specifically around AI agents, and that was, are you currently deploying autonomous AI agents within your marketing tech stack? And mostly people are like, well, not really yet. So it's still early days for those kind of agentic AI deployments within the tech stack. You see half of respondents said, well, we're evaluating, we're thinking about it. And you can kind of quantify where the leading edge is there with that, 6% that have a multi-agent ecosystem with 10 plus. But then obviously the follow-up question to that is, well, what are you using those agents for? So we asked that as well. And this is interesting to me in that it's kind of what you would expect. It's kind of what I said about that testing methodology. And how do you measure? How do you create assets? Creative assets out generated algorithmically have been around for a while, just not in the hands of the marketers themselves. And so I think that once again, what this tells me more than anything is that we are moving the AI into the hands of users. There's a much broader democratization of AI within the marketing stack, where you had to rely on, whether it's kind of black boxes within the publishers, or middleware that you have to pay more for to be able to do these things. It's now getting to where marketers can augment their measurement. They can augment their asset creation in ways that they were very labor intensive for them before and could create bottlenecks. And then last within this section is, what is the primary hurdle in getting these agents to orchestrate your cross-channel campaigns? And here we see a blend of kind of the normal marketing problems we would expect. The interoperability, the data silos, but also some more AI specific issues with governance. Fear of hallucinations and some of those AI specific things we've seen, and then human oversight. We hear more and more about this human in the loop that is almost necessary to make sure that everything's running smoothly. So it's a pretty even split between kind of old school problems and new school problems for how to make these agents more dependable and more universally applicable to more marketing situations. And that's, that 10% or however who have deployed these now, they're going to be the ones who are going to ring out the system for the folks who are still testing and looking. So that's a lot about AI. We want to talk a little bit about CTV as well, because we saw that was an important element of the stack as well. It's an area of increased investment. It's an area of increased importance and trends. And so we asked, which structural challenges are most preventing you from treating connected TV as a performance channel? Because we know connected TV, it's digital, so it has a lot of the digital footprint and breadcrumbs that we're used to as digital marketers, but it also looks a lot like TV as a traditional upper funnel. And here again, we see a lot of the same issues as upper funnel and video tactics. We see inconsistent methodologies for GRPs versus digital metrics. We see the complexity of deduplicating. We see that. I think 4 of these are more traditional, but then the green one, the high cost of inventory, is the new wrinkle. Because it is addressable, because it is trackable, it gets a bit more of a premium pricing model than perhaps traditional video or even non-programmatic or CTV premium video. So I think it's a lot of what we've seen for video in general, with that new wrinkle that we're expected to justify costs more directly via ROI, and it's still just as challenging as it was for non-connected TV, but with the additional burden of having that traceability. And then next, we asked what the biggest challenges you face with frequency management are today. And my note on this was literally meet the new boss, same as the old boss, just to keep the musical theme going for you Who fans out there. And we see a lot of the same issues that have been issues with online video writ large. Lack of unified measurement, cross-channel visibility, data silos, duplication and overlap, frequency caps, et cetera. So these are still pervasive problems that we as a digital marketing industry are trying to sort out as the technology changes. Our 6th insight is about modernizing transactions for strategic scale. I think anyone within programmatic and premium video is aware that there are a lot of touches that get you from the ad to the recipient of that ad and the viewer of that ad. And so if you were to be able to cut out those middlemen, if you were able to work directly with the publisher, the question is, what are the most significant benefits your organization would see? And a lot of this is what you would expect from any sort of streamlining or automation. It's faster, it's cheaper, it's more accurate, it gives you time back. So I think the take-home message here is that marketers are very aware of what that simplification of the supply chain would mean to them. And they do value that. They value, different things a little bit differently. No super clear winner other than faster activation. But, everybody got representation on this one. And lastly, our 7th insight is about transparency and actionability defining the new standard for ad verification. What do we mean by that? We asked what aspects of ad verification are critical when selecting partners and evaluating return on investment. We saw a fairly, tight grouping of transparency, actionability, comprehensive channel coverage. I want to focus on transparency because this is something I think is a large issue within the industry now, and not just in ad verification necessarily. It's also within paid search. It's in within paid social, where we're seeing more of these black box algorithmic decisions being made. And marketers don't like that. They want to be able to see, they want to be able to understand methodology. They want to be able to understand their data sources. They want to see what's happening. Even if they can't necessarily affect it directly all the time, they still want to know, because then that allows you to act on it. And there's our actionability segment as well. So just to wrap a nice bow on it, those are our 7 insights. Once again, digital maturity, signaling core pillars, performance is the anchor, testing is the lever, pragmatic shift, navigating the gap to agents, et cetera, and so on. And I and a coughing fit too to add to it. So my apologies for that. I'm going to turn it back over to Aaron, who's going to bring us to our panel portion.
Thank you, Kaz. I'll let you, take a breath and a sip. Appreciate it. That was awesome. And now we're going to turn it over to our panel. We pre-recorded this a couple days ago, so I'm going to cue it up via a video here. You'll have folks reacting to the research that we just presented. This conversation will be led by Megan Gall, and she'll introduce everyone. And then at the very end, I'll come back for a couple final comments, announcements, and pieces of content for you.
Hi, everyone. I am Megan Gall, SVP of Marketing Strategy here at Innovid. And I am joined by Jinx and Thomas. I'll let them introduce themselves quickly and we'll dive right in.
Awesome. Great. Yeah, hey, I'm Jinx Shagukar. I'm CMO of Optimum, which is pretty recent. Prior, I was an Innovid client and also leading marketing at Sling and Dish, and working in digital at Comcast. So great to be on.
Great.
I'm Thomas Atkins. I am the Executive Director of Paid Media here at MGM Resorts, overseeing our Las Vegas and regional property portfolio.
Awesome. And thank you both for joining today. It is great to have you. We'll dive right in. So really to wrap it up, right, we've spent the last decade digitizing marketing, and this next phase is about connecting what already exists and making that actionable, right? So we saw some trends. Social 88%, search 92%, CTV 89% have crossed into these foundational pillars, or what we're calling as the arrival of the core pillar era, as we saw in that first report insight, meaning they're no longer really growth channel territory. Thomas, I'll start with you. What's the biggest shift that you've seen in the report compared to, let's say, 12, 18 months ago? And how does that align with how you guys plan to allocate dollars within MGM?
Sure. So I would say that one, I think the obvious sort of elephant in the room here, right, is the appearance of the ability to buy ads within sort of this dedicated AI space. And so I think that shift there and the fact that it's sort of the newest and the shiniest, right, as people figure out what they want to do, is going to continue to be a driver in terms of overall investments and where people put money. That said, and something that I do think is worth calling out is that from an investment standpoint, how we shift at MGM isn't going to sort of dramatically change over the next 12 months, in large part because AI is really heavily incorporated into both the search and social space. So I think as you look at how the spaces have developed, right, the fact is that Google is a dominant player in AI. I think the merging of those worlds is pretty evident, and AI mode and then sort of their generative responses have been a significant driver of AI adoption among sort of your general consumer. So I think even as standalone AI tools and platforms continue to gain share, I think the reality is that you're going to continue to see social and search adopt that new tool set in new and unique ways. And I don't think we can necessarily count them out in terms of investment dollars moving forward.
Gotcha. So really less, I mean, backing up that kind of core pillar idea, right? It's less about the movement now. We've stabilized as an industry on where the spending is performing. It's more about how we are optimizing and how we're leaning in and leveraging AI. Jinx, what about you?
Yeah, no, I think that's right. Thomas hit the nail on the head, which is, I always used to say to teams, and this was like a couple of years ago, which was the Stone Age, I guess, at this point. But, I would say, hey, look, we are using AI. Like AI is a thing you're reading about. Like ChatGPT, I don't even think was on people's phones yet, which made it really proliferate. But like, I would say, no, this isn't a Harvard business case. Like this is something we do every day. Like the search team, the programmatic, this is how they're bidding. Like literally, this is how they're doing work. I think now what we've seen is, to Thomas's point, it's part of the equation on media, and so it's now how does it come into other forms of media where maybe it hasn't sat, like for example, social from a media buy perspective, but then also how does it federate into those from a creative perspective? So how are we actually using AI with the right brand guardrails to create content that isn't slop, quite frankly, and isn't turning off customers? So I have a little bit of a broader purview than just media, of course. So, we're thinking about it all the way from like, how do we think about AI from a creation perspective, all the way to what Thomas alluded to as well. Like, how do we think about how we're showing up in, generative search and make sure that our properties are there and our partners are all saying the consistent brand voice and things so we can actually show. So it's gone basically from, I would say, like we were talking a couple of years ago, to being maybe an academic kind of exercise and like something that we had to draw awareness to it's proliferating in every part of our organization. We just have to figure out the right ways to optimize and the right ways to kind of do that within our brand standards and all that kind of stuff.
Right. So AI is no longer the story, right? It's like more about operationalizing it.
Right.
So, I mean, with that said, 75% of marketers say AI is a trend they're watching closely, but it's not kind of, as we're talking about, it's not this major transformation anymore. They said it actually dropped from 28% to 19% as kind of this major transformation, which backs up what we're saying. And AI is exiting this hype phase. And Chris Costello mentioned in the opening of our report that AI is becoming this incremental difference maker, backing up Jinx, what you're saying, figuring out ways to operationalize it. You've led marketing, as you mentioned, across streaming, telecom, financial services, now connectivity. You've seen different waves of digital transformation. Does it feel different or just sort of another technology shift?
No, I mean, I think it does feel different. And I'll just say, even back to the way this started, right? Like I've said this a bunch in different forums, but like my career started where like Google wasn't even selling ads. So like, the day Google started selling ads, like we're like, oh, that's cool. Let's figure this out. I will tell you that the CEO of the company I worked for had no idea that Google was selling ads and could probably care less about what we were doing there. So it allowed us some room to experiment and understand and learn and develop best practices before there was a dictate or a mandate or whatever. Now, I mean, and I'll say that this, like, starting maybe a couple of years ago, like you're in a board meeting, like, and the CEO or the chairman of the board or somebody is pulling out their phone and saying, well, let's see what ChatGPT has to say. Right. And all of a sudden, and like, that is a very base case, plain way to think about it. But like, if that is happening, then that it's on the tip of the tongue of the CEO and the board and all that. So like, even in the way we talk to, our executive leadership, it's like, okay, how are we leveraging AI? What are we doing? What are the key pillars? What are the work streams? And so it's interesting because it's not, to your point, it is the operating system. It's like nobody says like I use a Windows or a Mac, like no, right? Like, right. And so like, but yet we still have to elevate. It's an operating system that we're all using, but we still have to elevate how we're using it. And that's kind of the interesting place we are as business, where we're adopting it at such a high rate, but we almost have to prove we adopt it to make the case, right? And so it'll be interesting as we move to the next 12 to 18 months where it truly is this operating layer, and then it's just assumed. And then I think then you kind of get out of this conversation about AI that you were mentioning, and it's like, no, just how are we driving business value? And this is a tool in our toolkit, right?
Gotcha. Speaking of interesting, you host the Art of Commerce podcast.
Yeah.
And you spend a lot of time talking with different operators, founders, interesting people. Has there been a conversation recently that changed your perspective on AI a bit? Or maybe you had like an aha? So
Yeah, no, so thank you for promoting my podcast. I love it. We're on Spotify and YouTube and all of that stuff. But yeah, we had a chance to talk about with a bunch of whether they're AI founders or AI practitioners about what they're working on, and there's a lot of fascinating things going on between quantum computing, which will absolutely blow your mind, which I'm not going to get into right now. But like that one was crazy. But I think that for the folks listening, the most salient thing that I've we had a conversation with someone that led AI at a tech company, and he relayed this to me, and it's got me thinking so much, which is, look, the benefit of AI is like this improvement in efficiency, and improvement in the way we work, and improvement in our collaboration model, right? For example, I can create an agent for me and my function, and that has the bandwidth to go out and talk to different agents, maybe that finance creates or inventory creates or whatever. And you can almost break down the silos between communication. You can be really efficient because these agents can be working when you're not, and all this stuff. But the real crux of that is, I think where we are today is we're getting individual, like, siloed efficiency. Like, okay, great, I want to make this PowerPoint and I can do it in Claude, and it would have taken me hours before, now it takes me minutes. Great. But what we're not getting is like the true vision and efficiency of AI across an organization, because we don't have yet the right communication methods for own AIs to talk to each other, right? Like I have multiple vendors and and each one of them has an AI component. But if they don't talk to each other, then we still have this bottleneck of communication that we still have to get over. So the thing for me is, what I think about, and I don't have an answer to it, but what I'm trying to think about for my organization, the aha, is like, okay, I think we've, to the point we made before, I think we've gone to the adoption place. I think people understand why they should use it. Now, as a leadership team, I really have, with my leadership team, we have to figure out how we get these things to communicate with each other. So it's not just like another bottleneck that we're creating that's super efficient on the one end and then really slow on the other. So that was, I never thought about that before I was interviewing this guy, and I was like, oh yeah, you just blew my mind.
yeah, that is absolutely the way that we're thinking about it at Innovid. So glad that you said that. All about connectivity and really that intelligence layer that sits on top of the entire marketing ecosystem. So, Thomas, I love how MGM extends the life of creator and influencer content beyond social into YouTube and other video environments. That's such a great example of thinking beyond sort of this channel siloed approach and connecting content. How has AI changed the way you guys are deciding how to create that content, how you're approaching creator content, and then giving that creative, second lives?
Absolutely. So I would say that in terms of creator content and social content in general, we actually have a tool in-house that sort of functions as an AI scorecard for the content across social. So essentially, it tracks everything that we have uploaded into Meta, Pinterest, etc., takes a look at what's performing well, and sort of starts rank ordering things based off of the sort of general trends that they're seeing with what's driving performance for us. So if we say have goals towards conversions, what type of creative is driving the strongest conversion rate? Or if we have goals geared towards video views, traffic, etc., what is really driving impact for each of those different objectives in the platform? And then what has been really great about that is we then incorporate that scorecard into our best practices, so that whenever we request new creative from our social and creative services teams internally, they can then react to that scorecard appropriately and make adjustments. So now best practices are moving away from what are the safe zones on social and making sure that you have the logo in the first 3 seconds, right, to more thoughtful interaction of how do you showcase your properties meaningfully and what moves the needle by property. So because here at MGM, we own Bellagio, MGM Grand, the Cosmopolitan, etc. Each one has a really sort of unique brand voice and different aspects of the property that resonate with the end consumer. And so the ability to sort of quickly understand, analyze, and tranche what is most meaningful in the creative has been really impactful. from a social asset creation standpoint. From a creator content standpoint, then that sort of influences the same idea, right? So how do you then adjust the itineraries to better reflect what people actually want to see? And so that has been an interesting point of how do we adjust the briefs or how do we adjust the creative itself? And then how does that then spill out to other channels as you take best performing creative from there and apply that across the board? And then do you see those same performance trends?
Gotcha. So creative was the top reported usage of AI. The other one was data analysis in the report. And really, that's only as good as the connectivity of your data, right? I think it was reported a lot of marketers are struggling with unified data, unified measurement across CTV is a struggle. 57% say cross-channel transparency broadly is a struggle. You're just mentioning your multi-property portfolio that you're managing across MGM. So how does that break down for you in the process? Are you struggling with that data connectivity, and how are you guys solving for that?
Definitely. I think it's something that plagues the space, right? From a media standpoint, we have so many different goals and
Hmm.
ways of buying media. Different channels have different capabilities and different ways of being measured that inevitably you're going to run into significant roadblocks. I think the reality is that as an industry, we sort of always take it as whatever you can do in that moment, right? I think, we've all contended with the reality that Apple, for example, has far less measurement capabilities, for example, because of how they limit tracking versus, say, Android devices. And so I think that is the reality of what we lived with, excuse me, and we've adapted to it. So in the same way here, I think it's really a case of what can we gather and then what can we decision based off of what we have. So in our case, right, and I think this is something that a lot of advertisers are moving towards is how do you API in all of the data from all of your various platforms into a data lake? Collect it, and then that makes it much easier for any sort of tool or system to then read, understand, and then provide insights and thoughts around how do you then change or adjust your programming from a media standpoint. And so that has been sort of our key focus is how do you update sort of the backend data
Hmm.
infrastructure that supports everything else. Obviously, that is then limited largely to anything that's connected to the digital landscape. And then you can use other tools like MMM to sort of say, okay, if you're measuring everything in totality across all of your sort of offline and online channels, then how do you sort of drive correlations between your offline and online media? And in that standpoint, we get back into sort of our standard working models. So I think
Hmm.
it's about controlling what you can, adjusting appropriately, and making it as easy as possible to leverage all of these great new tools that we have at our disposal, while then also finding ways to then correlate that to a sort of a broader media mix that we know drives impact.
Gotcha. And then leveraging AI on top of that to make it all happen faster and really.
Exactly. It's really about, how do you leverage AI to drive those insights? What are the tools that they have built in? What are the dashboards that are getting created on the fly? So how do you custom create something for a campaign that you just launched 2 weeks ago, as an example, to provide insights up to your sort of board or your leadership team?
So we talked a little bit about how the need for that intelligence layer, and how AI is really going to be exceptionally more powerful with the connectivity across the industry, turning data into action. So let's talk about data a bit. In the report, right? Industry doesn't really have a data problem. It's more of a signal problem, which ties back to the connectivity of data. Data analysis was the other top usage in the report alongside um, creative for leveraging AI, but obviously that's only as good as the connectivity of your data. I guess, where do you struggle with leveraging data internally? I mean, are you leveraging AI to do the analysis, and where does that kind of break down for you guys?
Yeah, no, it's a fantastic question, and the short answer, or the end of the question is, well, we have to use AI to do the data analysis because we
Right.
physically, there, humans can't, like, there's too many pieces of data and signals to do that. But I'll just take a step back because I've talked about this in other forums, and particularly with you guys at Innovid, and so we're trying to solve this together, which is, from a macro view, you really have three kind of areas of opportunity, right? When it comes to data, it's really data, insight, and activation. That's the way to think about it. So many organizations, including ones I've worked with, are data rich, but like insight poor and activation poor. So what does that mean? We got a ton of data, right? We're getting we know what our customers are watching. We know usage. We know blah, blah, blah. But we don't know what that data means, the insight, and we don't know what to do with it, the activation. And so that's where I think a lot of us have been, and maybe some of us still are. I think now where we are is we are data rich and getting insight rich, meaning we understand that we have a lot of data and we understand what it means, we think, but we don't know how to take those insights and really activate, and actually bring it to activation. And so we're activation poor and maybe rich in the other areas. And so that's the piece I'm really trying to solve, and really trying to figure out how we have whether it's some of our ad tech stack, our MarTech stack, our e-com stack, whatever it is, like how we are able to funnel in the insights from our data set, put it in a system that allows us to then put, whether it's just content on the website, content in our media, content in our customer comms out. But then the real key is getting that data back, feeding the machine again and saying, okay, did that work? Was that the right message for Megan? Was it the right message for Jinx? Okay, if not, what else do we test? What else do we learn? What pieces of that creative or comms or delivery system worked? Let's keep that. Let's optimize the rest. And it's like that constant iteration, I think, can only happen with AI. And that's where we are in the early stages of developing that. But that's, I think, where if we're able to crack that, that's where the real efficiency and benefit comes in.
Got it. Yeah. I mean, we're working to crack that through Nevo, right? Which is Innovid's AI that we are currently leveraging to help advertisers connect and bridge. I think in the report, we see marketers are prioritizing performance-driven media, AI, and measurement kind of all at once, right? And I think that's exactly what you talked about, the connectivity of everything, turning insight to action, like we like to call it, right? And it's really about AI surfacing those insights, identifying the risks, recommending the actions, and then being able to take the action. And that's what Nevo is really meant to do. So it's not spend dashboard, delivery dashboard, creative dashboard, measurement dashboard, right? It's just show me what's happening, show me what's underperforming, tell me what to do.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of this concept of orchestration, right? That's another theme in the report. Agentic AI is almost turning into orchestration, right? Like we have AI, we have agentic AI, and now it's about orchestrating it all.
Right.
So 28% of marketers have agents in production, according to a report, but just 16% are actually orchestrating those workflows. How are you guys? You talked about the need to do that. Are you doing anything to actually tap into orchestrating those workflows? I'm sure you're past that 50% in the report who are actively still researching agents or doing that alongside trying to orchestrate them. It's all a juggle.
Yeah, no. So I think again, to hit what we talked about before, like I think we have more than that in production, probably, right? Like from a 28% of the team, probably, probably 50 or more, right? Around people using it. But the real key is I think everyone is using it in their silos. We have not like really figured out how to use it end to end yet. And that's kind of the work that we're doing. And I think, we talked about it a little bit, I think, like this idea, and maybe even said it, like, you're like, right now it's a personal assistant, it's a chief of staff, it's a get your stuff done better. It's not a true teammate. And that's what we need. We like, in the world where we need to do more with the same, hopefully, but sometimes more with less, having this be a true teammate that can actually go out and collaborate with others, automate the process. So you have human in the loop is for checking, for validation, for strategy, et cetera, but not for execution. Like that's where we have to go. And I'll be honest with you, we are early stages of that, but we are working with partners like you guys, et cetera, to figure out how we can automate those in key areas. So like media is one for you. We're also doing the same in kind of our customer comms journey with our MarTech stack, et cetera. So.
Yeah. I like that. More with the same.
Yeah, but that's the conversation I have with my finance team. Let me be clear. We're the same. Let's not try to get less yet.
Yeah,
Okay.
I like that. I like that. Maybe we'd all lean in a little bit more with that mentality. Speaking of people, right? Governance, being a teammate, human in the loop. Governance is top cited barrier at 34% in the report, followed by human oversight at 30%. As a CMO, you are one that is signing off, and
Yeah.
obviously trust and governance is huge. Where do you land on kind of the human in the loop for agentic workflows, and how are you guys handling governance?
Yeah, I don't think we're at a place yet where we feel comfortable making anything completely automated. And I'll say, like I've said this on Innovid sessions before, like my Nirvana state is I want to be completely, I want that automation we talked about from activation rich, right? To just automate. Hey, this is the creative. Here it comes, and it's running, and if it's working, great. And then we can focus on other stuff. Like I don't want my team to have to manually create segments. I don't want my team to have to, so all that kind of stuff. That being said, I don't think I personally, and some people may argue with me, but I don't think the tech is quite there yet, quite frankly, to give it full trust. And I also don't think we as marketers have the trust yet, because it hasn't proven that we can trust it all the time, right? And so, and I always say, like, the human element is definitely about the taste and and the tools and the timing. Like that's what we bring into it, so I still feel like we need that. That being said, I don't want governance shouldn't be like it shouldn't be a bureaucratic, onerous thing, right? Like and sometimes, like I'll admit, like in certain organizations, the governance is like, okay, now you got to go to a council to talk about the AI you want to bring in, and it's like, okay, well, we're just literally doing LLM optimization, like for search. Like I don't think we need a council for that. I think we can just do that. So the real key is having governance that understands where governance is needed, which is like, okay, are we potentially doing something that's negative to our customers? Okay, yes, then we should have a test and learn process and a monitoring process on that. Okay, are we doing something that could be negative to the brand? Okay, here we go. Right. But the key for me is like where governance should be flexible. Say here, move fast here, because we feel really confident. Like, Thomas made the point, media buying. Like we should never go through a governance process for AI media buying. That's a well-worn path. We've been doing it. That being said, newer things, automated creative things, then I think you're going to want to, just to make sure you have control before you release it to the wild, so to speak. So
yeah, good point.
I'm of two minds there,
Yeah. It's great perspective. And it is all about proof at this point.
Yeah.
Right? We're at the proof stage. Interoperability and proof. So Thomas, we talked a lot about interoperability and just the fact that AI is at this orchestration phase of actually getting it to work together. In the report, interoperability is 24% cited as a barrier to adopting, getting systems to talk to each other. From your perspective, where do you see the biggest risk if agents start acting kind of without human in the loop, checking work first?
For that, I think, to Jinx's point, right? One, there is sort of this inherent lack of trust, ultimately, in sort of the decision-making capabilities of these agents. But I think, practically speaking, at least from a media lens, reality is we're in sort of the business of dollar in, and how much money are we spending at a time, right? And then how much revenue are we then driving for every dollar spent? And so with that in mind, the biggest, candidly, pain point would be if they get those budgets wrong. And so the reality is, right, when you're talking about workload responsibilities and who is owning sort of these workflows, I don't think staffs are fully educated enough and understand the realities of what AI can or cannot do to know what blinders to put on any sort of given ask or task. And so you don't know what you don't know, right? So if you don't know how to frame a prompt correctly and put the necessary and appropriate barriers in place to say, hey, I want you to invest in this, but there's an upper limit or there's a cap. I think you put yourself at a position where the risk is magnified, not because the tool isn't capable in that particular instance, but because the sort of human staff is unaware of what barriers need to be put into place. And I don't think as the AI sort of industry grows, right, that's something that is going to go away anytime soon. It's a rapidly shifting technology. There's a lot of change happening, and companies and people do not move as quickly as tech advances. And so I think that is going to be a continued point of tension as we see this progress in the space. And I think that is going to be a continued barrier for full adoption when you're talking about how you're orchestrating funds across the board and how you're allowing agents to make decisions.
Got it. Yeah, it's a great point. I mean, I think we built Nevo the way that we did here at Innovid, not just another chatbot, but that connected intelligence layer that sits across planning, activation, measurement, and optimization, but all with humans staying in control. But what we are seeing as we're rolling it out, right? It's like we're building our own rules as we go, and we're building them alongside of the humans that are learning from Nevo and learning from how to interact. So it's interesting. It's kind of a mutual learning and growing and figuring out how we're all going to be working together with our teammates of AI. Thank you guys for joining today. We'll wrap it up with a little lightning round question with if we're sitting here 2 years from now having the same conversation, what do you hope is something that your marketing teams are spending less time doing?
I'll start on that. I just think all the manual stuff we do today,
Yeah.
we've talking about Nevo, right? Like the benefit for us of Nevo is, if anyone's had the luxury of living in an ad ops world, it's a series of rows on a spreadsheet with all kinds of taxonomies and all that. Like, oh my gosh, if we can not be doing that, and that's an example that can be. I mean, I can give you an example from the ecom team, the customer comms team. Like, it's not just a media thing. If we can,
Right.
if we can get rid of that, then it really just frees us up as marketers to do the fun stuff that we want to do, which is how do we connect with customers, how do we drive more sales, all that fun stuff. So that's the hope.
I say that's 6 months from now.
Yeah, the Nevo, right?
Yeah. How about you, Thomas?
I would say much the same, right? You want all of the sort of rote work out of the way, right? So that the team can really focus in on this higher order conversations. I think one of the great things that you have all sort of noted is the reality of orchestration, right? When teams aren't spending enough time talking about how the various channels that they own interact with each other and what is driving performance in totality. And so once we get to that point of the conversation, I think that would be really impactful. And so that's where if we move away from the rote and sort of the routine maintenance of any given campaign and into those conversations, that's where we're going to see the magic happen, I guess, so to speak.
Awesome. I like to think about the potential of people too, right? We talk a lot about the potential of AI, but it's really expanding the potential of humans too. Well, thank you again for joining us, right? Thank you for all the wonderful insights in the report. And, big takeaway from the report is that marketers, obviously need more AI, but it's about that connected intelligence layer that turns insight into action, as you said, Jinx, and complexity into action. The winners moving forward won't be the organizations with the most tools, right? Well, they'll be the ones that can figure out the connectivity. Thank you all for joining us today.
Thank you, Megan, Thomas, and Jinx, for a great discussion. I'm just going to close this out with a few final announcements. First is the launch of Nevo. So that was just discussed in the panel. We're seeing some incredible early results for clients who've adopted our Nevo-powered agents inside of Innovid. So be sure to hit that QR code. We'll drop the link in the chat. We also have partnership news with Basis. We completed our integration with Protected, so you can get our verification inside their DSP and get all the benefits we talked about in the research with transparency and accountability. We also have news with Innovid being named a leader in the QKS Spark Matrix for ad tech. So download that report to learn more, and a ton of content coming out of Cannes. So that QR code will take you to a page with all the videos that we have posted and yet still more to come. And then the final plug is for the Mediaocean Podcast Network. If you don't know, now you know. We have a podcast network. It is live. 4 shows already up, a bunch more coming soon. In Cannes, we record over 30 episodes. We're going to be dropping them over the coming weeks and months. So go to that page and subscribe. They're on Spotify, Apple, and YouTube. There's the Fem Forward with Amanda Glenn Smith talking with women leaders across the industry. There's Added Up with Kristen Sanford, which is basically your ad tech 101. There's Frap Rap, which I host. And for season 1, we're revisiting the dot-com era, talking to folks who worked at Starcom IP, one of the early pioneering digital agencies. and Unfiltered Under 30, hosted by Claire Middleton, who talks to people that are young in age but old at heart and have some great wisdom to share on building careers and businesses. So check them out. Please subscribe, and thank you for joining us on our Mediaocean Current. Thanks again to our human in the loop, Chris Costello, and we'll see you next time. Bye-bye.